Okay, so today we're really diving deep into some powerful ideas about turning struggle into, well, not exactly a walk in the park, more like forging strength from the challenges you face. And we're doing it with this text that it doesn't mess around, it gets real, real fast.
Yeah, it really does cut to the chase. And what I find so fascinating is how it uses almost like this primal imagery to do it, like that gazelle and lion analogy right off the bat.
Oh, yeah, that one definitely grabbed my attention right away. It's such a vivid way to show how struggle is just like a part of life for all of us.
Exactly. The text argues that both the gazelle and the lion, they're both driven by this like primal need to survive. Right? The gazelle has to outrun the lion. Every ounce of its being is focused on that, or it becomes a meal.
And the lion, I mean, obviously it's a predator, but it still has to eat.
Precisely, the lion has to be just as relentless, just as driven. It's like this constant high-stakes chase. And the text doesn't shy away from that at all. It really leans into the intensity of it all.
That's interesting because it's not just about the external struggle, is it? The text also talks about those internal battles we have, like those moments when fear starts to creep in.
Absolutely. And you might think, okay, well, we're supposed to be figuring out how to overcome challenges, not wallow in fear. But the text makes this really important distinction between feeling the fear and letting it control you. Think about that gazelle again.
Are you saying that the burst of adrenaline, that terror, it's actually what fuels the gazelle's escape?
Yeah, it's about harnessing those intense emotions, not pretending they don't exist. The text seems to be saying that acknowledging the fear, the pain, even the discouragement, it's all part of what allows us to move through it. And, it's not just about surviving those moments, is it? This text really seems to argue that struggle, in a lot of ways, it's actually the foundation for growth.
Yeah, right. It uses that metaphor of dirt, which I thought was so clever because at first glance, I mean, who wants to think about dirt, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those words with kind of a negative connotation. But the text really flips that on its head. It reminds us that a seed needs the resistance of the soil to grow. I mean, imagine a tiny seed trying to put down roots in something like smooth and slick. It wouldn't work.
It needs something to push against, right? Something to provide support. It's counterintuitive, though, isn't it? We often see struggle as something to be avoided at all costs. But this text is suggesting we need it.
Exactly. It's in the pushing, the striving, the overcoming that we build strength and resilience. And that's actually where I think the text point about shortening your time frame comes in.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Things get tough. You look at the road ahead and it just feels impossibly long.
You just start to feel overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the challenge in front of you. But the text encourages you to kind of refocus on the immediate manageable steps. It's like, forget the finish line for a second. What's the very next thing you can do?
Instead of letting the enormity of a situation paralyze you, you break it down, just like that gazelle we were talking about before. We don't need to see the entire savannah stretched out in front of us. Just focus on that next bound.
And that ties into what I appreciate about the text's overall tone. It's direct, almost blunt at times. It's not here to coddle you. It's here to give you actionable advice.
Yeah, it's like that coach who's giving a halftime pep talk. It's not about sugarcoating things. It's about pushing you to dig deep and find that inner strength. It reminds me of that line from the text, staying down is an option, but so is getting back up.
Oh, yeah. There's such a powerful message in that simple statement. It acknowledges the difficulty, but reminds you that you always have a choice in how you respond. But making that choice, choosing to get back up, it often requires a plan.
Right. And while this text really emphasizes action, it also acknowledges that life very rarely goes according to plan.
And that's where adaptability comes in the text. Reminds us that having a plan is important, but being able to adapt when things inevitably go off course is crucial.
Which, let's be honest, happens all the time. Life throws those curveballs, those unexpected detours, and it's in those moments of unplanned change that we often discover a strength we didn't even know we had.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to another point this text makes about how we think about struggle, the difference between tragedy and hell.
Yeah, this part really made me pause and think. It's like even in the midst of really awful situations, our mindset can make all the difference.
It really can. It's not about denying the reality of difficult situations. It's about understanding that we have a choice in how we internalize those situations. You know what I mean?
And maybe that's kind of what this text is getting at when it talks about finding beauty even in the midst of struggle. Like even when things are really hard, we can choose where we focus our attention.
Yeah, it's a subtle point, but it's definitely there, kind of woven throughout the whole text. It's not about pretending the hard things aren't happening. It's more about acknowledging them and then asking, okay, but what else is also true? What else can I see if I shift my perspective even just a little bit.
Like training your mind to seek out those little slivers of hope, those moments of gratitude. Like, okay, maybe you're facing a setback or a disappointment, but
Yeah.
can you still find something, even something small to appreciate?
And that act of seeking, that choice to focus on something positive, it can be incredibly powerful. It actually ties back to what we were saying earlier about the gazelle and the lion. I mean, the gazelle is obviously in a terrifying situation, but there's also this fierce kind of beauty in its desperate run for survival.
It's like this text is urging us to find that same kind of fierce beauty within ourselves, even when we feel like we're running for our lives. To tap into that inner strength that allows us to keep going, keep striving, keep growing.
Yeah, and it reminds us that we don't have to go through it alone. The text, it has that direct, no-nonsense tone, but at its core, it's really a message of encouragement. It's urging you to tap into your own resilience, to embrace the struggle as a catalyst for growth.
This deep dive has been such a whirlwind, I feel like, of introspection and tough love. We've unpacked a lot, from the inevitability of struggle to the power of mindset, the importance of taking action and finding those glimmers of hope, even in the darkest of times.
We really dove deep into how those challenges, those moments that feel like they might break us, they can actually be the very things that shape us into the strongest versions of ourselves.
And, as we wrap up here, there's one last thought from this text that I keep coming back to. It's that idea of almost like leaning into the difficulty of mentally preparing ourselves for those worst case scenarios.
Oh yeah, almost like a form of mental resilience training.
Yeah.
The text seems to be suggesting that by confronting those fears head on, by imagining those difficult situations, we can actually build up a resistance to them.
Like we're kind of inoculating ourselves against future pain and setbacks. And I know it might sound counterintuitive, but it's really about shifting our perspective from one of fear and avoidance to one of preparation and resilience.
It's about recognizing that challenges are inevitable, but they don't have to define us. We can choose how we approach them, how we let them shape us.
So as you navigate the ups and downs of your own journey, remember the lessons from this deep dive. Embrace the dirt, find the beauty in the struggle, and never underestimate your own incredible capacity for growth and resilience.